I knew something was off the moment I pulled into my driveway. The porch light I clearly remembered turning off was glowing, casting a dull yellow hue across the entrance. My front gate sat slightly ajar, and there was a faint scuff mark along the doorframe, like someone had tried forcing their way inside. A knot formed instantly in my stomach. Around here, break-ins weren't the biggest concern. No, what we really had to deal with was something far worse. The HOA president, a woman people whispered about behind her back, calling her Karen, though never to her face. Karen had made it her mission to scrutinize every inch of my property, from the shade of my shutters to the way my German shepherd, Max, barked at passing squirrels. Nothing escaped her attention. But tonight, she crossed a boundary she could never undo. Because what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that while I was gone, Max had stayed behind, and Max was waiting. Before I go any further, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and your local time. I always like seeing how far these stories travel. When I first moved into Pine Ridge Estates, I genuinely believed I had found my own slice of peace. The brochure boasted quiet streets, perfectly trimmed lawns, and a sense of harmony among neighbors. After 2 decades of working construction jobs across the state, living out in motels, dealing with traffic, constant noise, I was ready to settle down somewhere calm. The house I bought wasn't anything extravagant. Just a simple, single-story brick home with a wide front porch and a backyard big enough for grilling. But what mattered most was the space. Plenty of room for Max, my German shepherd. Max wasn't just a dog. He was family. I'd raised him from a pup after he washed out of police K-9 training. Not because he lacked intelligence. Far from it. But because he didn't fit their rigid system. He was too independent. And honestly, that's exactly why I liked him. Loyal, sharp, and stubborn, a lot like me, those first few days felt perfect. I painted the porch railing, unpacked at my own pace, and even exchanged a few friendly waves with neighbors walking their dogs. In the evenings, Max would sit beside me, ears perked, eyes alert to every sound. I remember thinking, this is it. Finally, some peace. But peace doesn't last long when there's an HOA involved. It started small like it always does. On my 3rd morning, while I was carrying a box of tools into the garage, a woman in a bright red blazer marched straight up my driveway like she owned it. Her hair was perfectly styled, her lipstick matched her jacket, and her smile. Well, it reminded me of a crocodile right before it snaps. "Hello there, I'm Deborah Morgan, president of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association," she said, extending her hand. I shook it, though her grip felt more like a power move than a greeting. "You must be Mr. Lawson, the new homeowner," she added, already glancing past me into my garage like she was searching for something illegal. "That's right," I replied, still settling in. "Well, welcome to our wonderful community. We take great pride in maintaining standards here." Her eyes shifted to Max, who stood on the porch watching her carefully. "That's Max," I said. "Friendly, unless there's a reason not to be." Her smile flickered. "Yes, about that. We do have regulations regarding pets. Large breeds can be intimidating. I'll be dropping off the guidelines." I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Over the next week, 3 separate, friendly notices appeared in my mailbox. One complained about my trash bin being visible. Another mentioned the temporary American flag I'd hung. And of course, there was one about Max barking at exactly 7:15 a.m. when the mail truck passed. Now, Max wasn't one of those dogs that bark nonstop. He barked when something moved near the fence or when someone got too close. In other words, he was doing his job. But apparently, Karen didn't see it that way. At my first HOA meeting, things escalated quickly. I sat quietly in the back, just observing. But Karen spotted me immediately. "Ah, Mr. Lawson, our newest resident," she announced loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "We're so glad you could join us. Though I must remind you, our bylaws clearly state that noise disturbances must be minimized. Several residents have raised concerns about your dog." Half the room looked sympathetic. The other half looked relieved it wasn't them in the spotlight. "You mean the one bark at the mailman?" I asked. "I'm sure Max will send a written apology. A few people chuckled, but Karen didn't. Her expression tightened. "That kind of attitude disrupts community harmony," she snapped. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, offering a smile that clearly said she picked the wrong guy. From that moment on, it was personal. She began walking past my house slower than anyone else's, taking photos, jotting notes like she was building a case. Max would stand at the fence, watching her closely, tail stiff. She hated that. One afternoon, I caught her peeking through my backyard gate. I stepped outside with a cup of coffee. "See something interesting?" I asked. She flinched but quickly composed herself. "Just ensuring residents maintain standards." "You wouldn't want violations, would you?" "The only violation here is you trespassing," I replied flatly. Her lips tightened as she stormed off, heels clicking like weapons against the pavement. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control. And she wasn't going to stop. Within a week, I received my first fine. $50 for visible trash receptacles. The funny part? My bin was tucked neatly behind the fence, like everyone else's. The only way she could have seen it was by going out of her way to look. I refused to pay. That's when a flood began. Every other day, another letter showed up. My mailbox height, my porch light color, even a $100 fine for a small wind chime, something my late wife had loved. That one hit hard. I started keeping every letter in a folder, partly as evidence, partly because it amazed me how far she'd stretch things just to justify her obsession. If she'd spent half that energy improving the neighborhood, Pine Ridge would have been perfect. But instead, all her focus was on me, and especially on Max. "Large animals are a liability," one letter read. "You must demonstrate adequate control." Max was better trained than most people I knew. Sit, stay, guard. He knew it all. Her issue wasn't control. It was intimidation. She hated that he made her feel powerless. At the next meeting, she doubled down. "We've received multiple complaints about Mr. Lawson's dog," she announced. "It creates an unsafe environment." Unsafe? I stood. "He hasn't bitten anyone. He hasn't chased anyone. He stays behind my fence. If he barks, it's because someone's too close." A few neighbors quietly agreed, but one glare from her shut them up. "If you can't follow the rules," she said coldly, "perhaps this community isn't right for you." That line, that smug little line, she'd used it before to push people out. But I wasn't going anywhere. After the meeting, I overheard her telling another board member, "I'll find something to evict him over." That's when I knew this wasn't paranoia anymore. She was planning something. And what I didn't realize yet was just how far she was willing to go